Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Everyday Love. Um, I am joined this week by someone I know back from my days at the Huntington Theater Company. Um, this is Farrell Parker, who came up, went to Boston University, and that's how we met then, but has gone on to have a career as a writer performer in DC. And the reason I was really interested to talk to her today was because of a company she founded. And Farrell, I'd just love for you to introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Yes, it's true. My name is Farrell. I would let it be you. Or yeah, I went to be you. So I started a company called Artist Tax Prep in 2018. I just had like 7 jobs, and I was like, this seems untenable. And also trying to do the jigsaw puzzle of all those gigs with theater was just too stressful. Most artists hate doing their taxes, and I never hated doing mine. Um, so I started just doing 10 the first year. Um, and now we have 500 clients, um, around ish. And I have two other preparers working with me. Um, and surprisingly, no one else has a company called Artist Tax Prep. So there was clearly the market for it. And then in that time, I feel like COVID actually improved the tax business because my business is remote and all of a sudden everyone had to be doing everything remote. And then also people wanted to make sure they were getting their stimulus checks. So I feel like it just like made it move faster. Even though obviously COVID like put a damper on the theater side of things. But then pretty much since COVID, my gig has primarily been doing as an actor, theater for young audiences, new musicals at the Kennedy Center, which that has also shifted now. But
Very different Kennedy Center than it was
yeah,
a year ago.
yeah, pretty much everyone is gone. That I honestly like don't I'm sure I'm speaking out of turn, but I don't know exactly who's left there that I worked with, but most of the people that I worked with there are no longer working there.
Wow. Um, what is it about being an artist, being a gig worker, being someone with a lot of different sources of income that makes taxes so, at least seem so challenging and daunting?
Yeah. I think it's that a lot of people who are just trying to make enough money to survive as artists don't necessarily realize or aren't operating under the idea that the IRS is operating under, which is that if you are making self employment income, you have a business. And when you have a business, you have certain responsibilities as a taxpayer, mainly to um, accurately report your income and expenses. But I think that no, a lot of people are in such a, and this is not true just for artists. I mean, I think this is kind of nationally true right now. A lot of people are in such a state of of urgency, franticness, like just trying to make everything work that no one is tracking. People aren't like diligently tracking these things. But if you are tracking them, you will benefit from the tax system because the tax system is set up to benefit business owners.
So, backing up a second, what is it?
Yeah.
Um, what do you think it is about taxes or the process of taxes that appeals to you? Because the artist mindset, I would not think would also vibe with the mindset needed to meticulously put together a proper tax return.
I think I've always been pretty meticulous. I have a business degree. So a lot of people say I'm not an accountant. I'm not into math. The tax return is not, I mean, yes, it's about simple math and formulas, but I am not approaching it from that standpoint. I'm really approaching it from okay, this is what the law says, this is how I'm interpreting the law, and this is how I'm completing the form. It's essentially filling out it's a lot of employment paperwork, which is actually a lot of what I did when I worked at the Huntington. Was mostly, I feel like employment paperwork, contract, looking at laws. Um, so I don't know. I lost track of your question, but I think I might have answered it. Oh yeah. So I think I've always been like left brain, right brained to some extent. And it's just like how I want to use it. Because I've always been like meticulous about like science experiments, cooking and baking. Music I find is obviously very mathematical and meticulous. And most of what I've done in theater is music. So I do think there's like a combo there, but um a lot of it is just uh interpreting data.
Mm-hmm. Um, I find I think you have a unique opportunity that you've used as an artist, as a performer, to promote your own business in a way that I think is um, more fun than probably many other tax professionals or tax employers would do. I was looking over your socials, and you play characters. The characters you play, you're speaking as yourself as artist tax prep Farrell Parker, but then there's a character who's also you, who is in some amount of panic about something they didn't know they could deduct or whatever, whether it's voice lessons or something like that. um, uh, was that something you initially conceived of? Oh, this is another advantage I have in doing this is I can be my own best spokesperson.
I think that um I I knew to brand the business like as myself. I think because I was so focused on my DC community and like just generating and using like the interpersonal trust that people have in me and just like sort of like what my reputation is absolutely. Um and we definitely like to say like we're not regular tax preparers, we're cool tax preparers. And it's really true. Like I almost want to show you the shed I'm in because I am roommates with one of my tax preparers and he is a musician and it's like it's almost too cool in here. But but it was harder to find the social media element of it because it is like a different skill. But once I was like, oh, yes, I do have this performing, I can like use performing to get this information across in a way that I think most tax people can't. That makes it like so accessible to people and so like um less, yeah, just like less scary. Like I'm talking to you and as me, right? As I'm talking to other actors. I'm not really talking like I think a lot of people are afraid to be talked down to by people who work in money. I mean, this is like another national issue in my opinion, but people don't want to be no one wants to feel stupid.
Yeah,
And people already feel, not just artists, people already feel so stupid because everything is so big and opaque. So anything that I can do to make people feel like yes, you have to do this. Yes, it's opaque. Yes, it's a lot of it is silly and unfair but we're going to do it together.
that's great. Um, how much do you have to pay attention to politics? And by that I mean you know when Trump came into power the first time, the second time, and Biden came in, there are changes to the tax code that they propose, and some of them pass and some of them don't. How much of that trickles down to you and things you have to be aware of for your clients?
Good question. When I started, it was part of the reason that I chose the timing to start my business was because that was when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed. And what happened was that actually was a really big change in the tax law and how almost everyone filled out their taxes. So this year and then there were all kinds of COVID regulations. So I would say that that's a huge part of the job. It is not a set it and forget it. The tax law changes every single year. And sometimes those changes are big and sometimes they're small. And then we're also dealing with states, which are either, especially in 2018, a lot of states conformed to federal regulations, but a lot of states chose not to, which made it even more complex. It's very, very complex. No one ever takes tax law and is like, let's just start from the bottom. We are just adding and adding and adding. Um, and it's, I mean, untenable, and why it feels untenable for people to do a lot on their own. But also just feels it feels not helpful for all of that to be going on. But in answer to your question, yeah, that's a huge part of the job is keeping up on what's happening. We do continuing education training every year. And you have to. Um, and you have to know how these changes are going to impact things, but you don't know until the forms come out. And the forms don't come out until the season opens, which is end of January. So a lot of times you're like having to learn um what the actual impact is like once you're actually digging into taxes. Um yeah, I was going to say something else about that, but it'll come back to me.
Hmm. Um, do you have sources of information that you rely on, whether it's tax specific sources or certain news sources or cohorts of fellow tax folks who in January you're like, okay, let's have the brain get together of what break this down and all of that.
We have we are required to do certain continuing education, not by the federal government, but by Maryland and New York specifically. So we will always get updates from them because we're required to stay up to date. Everyone that works with me is volunteering throughout the tax season through the volunteer income tax assistance program, which is for low income and elderly Americans, that anyone that fits under these income rules and just like doesn't have certain assets can use this service. So we are also taking a test through that program every year. And there's tax law update courses. So a lot of it is coming straight from the IRS. And then I'm also using like certain publications that I get now like regularly notified on. There's some podcasts too. um, I would say like eh, a lot of it is in reading what other people have interpreted about the law, and then if that's unclear to me, going back to the actual law. I mean, I really never thought I would be doing anything in the legal realm. I don't think I even thought this necessarily had to do with like legality when I got into this business. But when I started taking my courses, they were at Georgetown Law, which I feel like I was like, oh, so I've learned obviously a lot about taxes aside from knowing how to do the form, but it's way more legal than I knew when I started.
Was there a moment? So you finished college, you at some point moved to the DC area.
Yeah, I finished college. I worked for a year in fine dining in upstate New York because I studied hotel restaurant management in college. And then I moved to DC.
Okay. And you moved there primarily performing to start?
Yes, and the restaurant industry was also like growing a ton. So it was both restaurants and performing. Those industries here were just like picking up a lot, and I saw that when I had come to visit friends that were here. So I thought it was a place where I could get in on the ground floor of like both sides of things.
So then was there a moment, an aha moment where you're doing these jobs where you realized I can actually be where friends were coming to you with, stress about taxes or whatever, and you realized, oh, there's an opening here for something that doesn't
I
look.
I think it was because I was using my parents' tax preparer, and I think it came out of my sort of natural DIY mentality, which is like which maybe actually comes from my upbringing, but also actually maybe from learning to cook. Like most people aren't like, oh, what if I did make my own ricotta and it was better and cheaper and lasted longer? But I'm like, oh yeah, what if I just was like, why am I paying someone to do this? Maybe I can do it myself. I have no idea because I think a lot of almost everyone's knowledge about taxes comes from their upbringing because for some insane reason, we're not taught anything about it, which I think should be mandatory in like our high school education. especially these days. But so mostly it was, oh, I can do this on my own. And then definitely just working. And when tax season came around, people being like just so, just so whiny and miserable about having to deal with to deal with other paperwork, which is something that I just don't mind dealing with the paperwork. And also I think I want to take care of people. And so uh when people are like, please someone do this for me, I was like very willing to do that. But it was a lot of like, is this a doable, like, is this something I can actually do? Like, I didn't have any network in this industry, and I still have a very limited network because there aren't that many people doing what we do. But I feel like it was during when I was doing a production of Singing in the Rain that this like happened, but I don't know. I can't say for sure when the moment was, but I do remember that the energy of that show specifically.
That's funny. Um, Switching gears for a second, you came into um, both the restaurant and the performing business when you got to DC. You were a bartender during some of that time, um,
Yeah.
and this leads into something that you are the only guest I've had, and perhaps the only guest that we'll ever have. I don't know, who has also been a guest on Fox and Friends. So,
Yeah.
would you mind telling? You've been on. You were on twice. Is that correct?
I was on twice. They asked me to be on this last Christmas Eve,
Oh, really?
actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yes, I was on twice.
Can you explain how that came about and what you were doing there?
Yes. So it was a shutdown. Like where this shutdown doesn't even feel real to me in some ways because I'm not when I was bartending at a bar on the hill that if you ask a Republican will say it's a Republican bar. I might personally disagree, but definitely we had like a lot of Hill staffers working there, and so we had shutdown specials. And my boss came up with all these creative names that were related to, like drama that was going on with senators and Politico stuff that at the time I was completely not keyed into. Our t-shirts at that job said, "We don't care who you work for." That's how much of a hill bar it was. But because of the bar's connection to politics and however they found out that we were doing these specials, um, they just wanted to have someone come up and do a bar segment. And nobody else has ever wants to be on TV.
Okay. There's like
But
there.
they're like, put Farrell on.
Farrell's thing. Farrell's good with this.
So yeah, the funny part of that experience, one of the funny parts of that experience is I did not sleep for 48 hours, Adam. I had so much to do at the time and I was like, I'm going to keep doing all of it. And I have to I can't
Before.
hear you. This was in the middle. But I had to get up to New York because I was in DC, get up to New York. They picked me up from a hotel. My boss got the hotel. You have to bring all the supplies, like uh, including ice, I think. Like I literally think I had to bring ice. Um, and yeah, then do a 6 a.m. bartending segment.
So it is. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the host or one of the hosts at the time was our current. He has a new job now. He is our current Secretary of War. It's his preferred thing. So um, I remember. I don't remember what you said, but I do remember at the time when he was nominated and confirmed, you had some things to say on social media about what it was like to meet him and who you felt he was. Um, what are your thoughts on our current Secretary of War from your experience with him?
Yeah, listen, Pete Hegseth is a classic charming drunk. Like first of all these people on live TV are all insane, okay? Because the energy is great. The adrenaline rush that I've felt from that live TV experience was like intense. I mean, forget the fact that I hadn't slept for 2 days. So already people that are on doing this for a job And by the way, Dean Cain was another one, who was on there,
Oh,
are just like very intense personalities already. Um, it's very fun vibe. It's a very fun vibe, but in a way like almost in a high risk way. I think it is, and I think it is high risk because you are on live TV with X million viewers. But I will say everyone loved the segment. Like when I got off, the producer was like, "That was good TV." Like they loved this segment. But Pete Hegseth loved the booze, and people were taking drinks out of his hand. Like to make because he was fully double fisting the drinks that I made. He had to get his morning going, I guess.
yeah.
I know a lot. Also, I've been a bartender. I know I'm a codependent. I know a lot of drunk people. And Pete Hegseth is a classic charming drunk.
Wow. Okay. So in all seriousness, I mean, it's very funny, but when you learned that he was going to get this job, this is not any normal job. This is a job that is profoundly serious and, requires serious people to do it safely and well. What did you think of that when you're like, they're giving it to him?
First of all, I did not remember that I had done this with him. It
Okay.
like I had to be like, oh, was I on live TV with Pete Hegseth years ago? And this has to do with again my like lack of engagement, which is just changing because I'm like, what's going on is too stressful to me to like not be involved. Um, uh, it's I think it's very. I mean, he has done drunk things on the job, and I think that's what clicked it for me was seeing the things like the news of him like messaging people that he shouldn't be messaging and being like, oh right, now I'm like remembering my experience with this person. So I didn't have any thoughts about the appointment, but once I was like, oh yeah, but it's unsurprising, Adam, to me in this administration.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I just, uh,
Yeah.
it having someone who has had that kind of experience with
Yeah.
one of these folks is really quite enlightening and not surprising. Um,
They're performers. I mean, they're good performers.
yeah,
But
yeah, but there's nothing else there, and that therein lies the problem. Um, wow. Now, and also being on that show, being in that studio, um, I say we on the left, myself on the left, political left,
mhm.
have an impression of that network and what it's like to be there. That it is toxic, dangerous, crazy, even just in the hallways or whatever. And I know that's probably not true. It's probably a workplace like any other workplace. But what was it like to be in that as a workplace, as a place where there are people doing a job? Did it feel any different than anything else? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a gay Latino doing my hair. Like it's completely like almost completely the same as any other acting job I've ever done in terms of the people that are like running the cameras.
Right.
I mean, most of these people there's a lot of these jobs in New York, I would say. And to me, I wouldn't say that like certainly everyone behind the scenes is not like ideologically aligned. But I was excited to see. I was like, what's it gonna be like? And once they started doing my hair, I was like, oh, it's like just the same in terms of the people that are like as you said, like just the people working there. Obviously, the people that aspire to work there, I think generally have a different generally might like want that job because of their political ideology. It was very important to me that I go on this show and just like not just like buy in. Like I was like I know I'm going to do this. I know my political ideology and I'm not just going to go on there and be like and pretend that it's not my ideology. Now, I will say on the drive up to that, again, because I was not keyed into like names of senators and had no idea. I had a friend with me just Googling and reading information to me as I'm driving so I can like not first of all, my objective was to not make an idiot, not look like an idiot. And then I was like, and then if I can like get some digs in on DJT, etc., that's my secondary objective. And I felt that I succeeded.
I would agree, and I was kind of I was very much enjoying that those things either went over their heads or just didn't. They just kind of just went happened. Um,
They didn't go over their heads too, because Adam, the next time I was on, they asked me to tell them in advance what I was going to say
see.
because they wanted to win. And I felt that they did win the second round. Like I didn't feel as prepared or whatever, but they absolutely knew what had happened and they were like, "Let's go do another round."
That's really interesting. It's theater. It's its own form of theater. It's amazing.
Mhm.
Um, my the one other question I have about that is, so you go on, you do these segments. Did you get any pushback, feedback from friends and family who saw you on there or heard that you were on there and be like, "Why were you why were you on the show?" Like, did you get
No, because no, because 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 I dug and because I made comments. Honestly, I felt a little the thing I felt worst about was that I was getting positive feedback from both leftists and the conservatives in my life. But honestly, now years later, I don't think that's a bad thing. At the time, I felt like, "Oh, I should have been like harder to get along with, like made it more obvious." But then they had me on again, and it is like you have to be able I mean, I think this is going on a lot right now. Like there is something to be said for being able to talk to
yeah.
everybody. Also, they didn't pay me. I got paid by my bar. So I was never paid by Fox and Friends for anything. They don't pay you to go on and do a segment. It's considered like self-promotion. So I think like that no, I got no I absolutely had no I'm sure that people had something negative to say. An ex of mine told me that I didn't shake the cocktail very well and I'll agree with it. And I'll agree with him.
Well, you're under a little pressure.
Yeah, and no one ever taught me how to shake right. It's true. It's just true.
Wow. Well, Farrell, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing both your professional life and the great work you're doing for the artist, the gig worker community, um, and helping them with a very stressful pain point, and then sharing this crazy adventure you had on Fox and Friends. Um, I hope you'll come back and do this again sometime.
Thanks so much for having me. It was fun. I like talking. And you're great to talk to, Adam.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to see you again. We'll see you
You
soon.
too. Okay,
Bye.
do it.